What if the greatest power struggle in human history has never truly been about territory, wealth, or military dominance, but instead about belief itself, about the invisible force capable of shaping minds, guiding decisions, and quietly directing the course of entire civilizations across generations? Across countless centuries, kings have fallen, vast nations have collapsed, and revolutions have dramatically reshaped the global order, yet through every transformation and every upheaval, one silent force has remained constant, persistent, and deeply woven into the structure of authority itself. Faith. But not simply faith understood as a personal spiritual belief held quietly within the heart of an individual. Rather, faith operating as influence, as social force, and as a powerful framework, capable of shaping societies, legitimizing rulers, and guiding the direction of human history on a massive scale. Because when belief spreads across millions, sometimes billions, of human minds simultaneously, it stops being just religion. It becomes power. It becomes control. And the truly fascinating part is that this connection between belief and authority was not only observed by historians or political thinkers. It was recorded thousands of years ago within ancient texts that millions of people still read today. Texts that may have been describing the hidden structure of power long before the modern world even existed. So the real question may not be whether faith influences power, because history clearly shows that it does. The deeper question is whether this connection was predicted long ago, and whether the world we live in today is slowly unfolding within that very pattern. Throughout nearly every era of recorded history, political authority has rarely stood on its own without attaching itself to something greater than government, something that elevates its legitimacy beyond law or military strength. Divine authority. In ancient Egypt, for example, the pharaoh was never seen merely as a political ruler responsible for governing land and people. He was believed to be a living god whose authority existed not only over society, but also within the cosmic order of the universe itself. In the Roman Empire, emperors eventually adopted titles such as Pontifex Maximus, a position representing the highest religious authority in the empire, effectively merging the structures of religion and governance into a single system of influence. And the reason behind this pattern is surprisingly simple. Power enforced only through soldiers and laws can control behavior for a limited time. But power reinforced by belief has the ability to shape entire civilizations. When populations believe that authority is sacred, obedience becomes natural, resistance becomes dangerous, and power becomes far more stable. This pattern repeats itself again and again throughout history, and thousands of years ago, the Bible described something remarkably similar. In the book of Daniel, a powerful vision appears in which a series of massive beasts rise from the sea, each representing a great empire that would rise to dominate the world stage: Babylon, Persia, Greece, Rome. Empires that historians later confirmed would indeed shape the ancient world exactly as described. But the vision does not stop with those empires. It continues. It describes a future structure of power in which political authority and spiritual influence would merge in ways the world had never experienced before. Another passage, found within the mysterious imagery of the Book of Revelation, describes a powerful figure referred to as the Beast, a symbol representing a system of immense global authority capable of influencing politics, economics, and the direction of society itself. But the prophecy includes a second figure that stands beside it, often called the false prophet or the second beast. This entity does not rule through armies or political decrees. Instead, it influences belief, performs persuasive acts, and convinces people to follow and support the authority of the first power. In simple terms, the prophecy describes a partnership, political authority working alongside spiritual influence, government intertwined with belief, two forces operating together in order to shape the direction of the world. For centuries, scholars, theologians, and historians have debated what these symbols truly represent. Some believed they referred to ancient kingdoms. Others argued they pointed toward events still waiting in the future. But the pattern itself is difficult to ignore, because throughout history, power almost never operates without belief systems that support and reinforce it. Consider the structure of Europe during the Middle Ages. Kings ruled nations, commanded armies, and controlled land, yet their authority was often legitimized by the church. Coronations were not simply political ceremonies meant to celebrate the rise of a new monarch. They were sacred rituals performed under the authority of God. The message delivered to the population was unmistakable. To challenge the king was not merely to oppose a political leader. It was to challenge divine order itself. And the result was powerful. Faith strengthened governments by creating loyalty and stability. At the same time, governments protected religious institutions and amplified their influence across society. A cycle. A partnership. Exactly the kind of structure ancient prophecies seemed to describe. Yet perhaps the most intriguing part of this story is not hidden in the distant past. It may be unfolding in the present moment. Today, the world no longer operates under traditional empires ruled by singular kings or emperors. Instead, power is distributed across vast global systems that influence nearly every aspect of modern life. Governments, corporations, technology networks, international institutions. At first glance, it might appear that religion has slowly lost its influence within modern political systems. But has it truly disappeared? Or has the relationship between belief and power simply evolved into something new? Because belief systems continue to shape human behavior on an enormous scale. Ideologies, cultural narratives, collective identities. These systems often function in ways strikingly similar to religion, guiding loyalty, shaping moral values, and determining who people trust. And in a world connected through digital technology, belief spreads faster than at any other time in human history. Billions of individuals can encounter the same idea, the same narrative, or the same emotional message within minutes. Information itself has become the new temple. Algorithms decide which ideas rise to the surface of global consciousness, and which ones quietly disappear into obscurity. Technology platforms possess the extraordinary ability to amplify belief across the entire planet, and belief continues to shape power. Consider the moment humanity now stands within. For the first time in recorded history, global systems are emerging that have the potential to influence economics, communication, identity, and social behavior simultaneously. Digital currencies, biometric identification, artificial intelligence, data systems capable of analyzing behavioral patterns across billions of people. These technologies create levels of coordination that previous civilizations could never imagine, but they also create levels of influence that history has never experienced before. Because when information shapes belief, belief can guide the decisions of entire populations. And suddenly, the ancient concept of a unified global system of influence no longer seems impossible. Instead, it begins to look technically achievable. This is where the ancient warnings recorded in Scripture begin to appear particularly interesting. The book of Revelation describes a future system in which economic participation becomes linked to allegiance to a particular authority, a world in which buying and selling require acceptance of a system of control. For centuries, this description sounded almost purely symbolic, something difficult to imagine existing in the real world. Yet within a global economy increasingly dependent on digital transactions and interconnected financial networks, the structural possibility suddenly becomes far easier to envision. The prophecy never described the exact technology, but it described the structure. Power, belief, economics, all operating together within a single interconnected system. But perhaps the most important question remains unanswered. Was the prophecy predicting a single future government that would eventually emerge on the world stage? Or was it describing a pattern that humanity repeatedly creates whenever power and belief become inseparable? Because history reveals something fascinating. Whenever belief becomes concentrated around authority, power expands rapidly. And whenever authority seeks long-term stability, it often turns to belief to legitimize its existence. It becomes a relationship that reinforces itself over time. Faith strengthens power. Power protects faith, until eventually the two become almost impossible to separate. Now imagine that pattern expanding to a truly global scale, a world where technology connects every nation, where belief systems spread instantly through digital networks, where authority can shape narratives capable of influencing billions of people simultaneously. For the first time in human history, the infrastructure for such a system actually exists, and that realization leads to an unsettling possibility. Perhaps ancient prophecies were never intended to describe only ancient empires long gone. Perhaps they were describing the final stage of a long historical cycle. If that possibility is true, then the relationship between faith and power is not simply a historical curiosity studied in books and documentaries. It becomes a warning, because belief remains one of the most powerful forces within human civilization. It can inspire courage, sacrifice, compassion, and unity. But belief can also be shaped, manipulated, and redirected. And when belief becomes a tool used by authority, the lines separating truth from control can slowly begin to disappear. Ancient texts never provided exact timelines for when these events might unfold. Instead, they did something far more subtle. They described patterns, symbols, structures of power that would appear repeatedly throughout history, almost like signals. Signals meant to be recognized by those willing to pay attention. And today, more people than ever before are beginning to notice something unusual. The structures described thousands of years ago no longer feel distant or symbolic. They feel familiar. Political authority expanding across interconnected systems. Global networks linking economies and governments together. Information shaping belief on a scale humanity has never experienced. Faith and power slowly moving closer together once again, which raises a final and deeply important question. Perhaps the real issue is not whether prophecy is unfolding before our eyes. Perhaps the real issue is whether humanity will recognize the pattern before it becomes too powerful to challenge. Because history has shown repeatedly that when belief and authority merge completely, the consequences can reshape entire civilizations. And sometimes the future does not arrive suddenly or dramatically. Sometimes it forms slowly, quietly, building piece by piece, hidden in plain sight, right in front of us, right now. This has been a signal, and the signal is getting stronger.